Yeah, just
Copy here.
tag me and Hamel and Brian.
I don't know if Hemo joined, but we'll see. I think Brian dropped out.
Okay.
I'm just gonna tag you. Yeah.
Okay, what do you think of the Latent Space podcast? I don't think that I write, so
You're saying?
I don't listen to anything I write, so it's fine.
Okay. I think it's not bad. I think you said some of the hard truths, though I think that you could have been more spicy. I mean, I talk to you all the time. I think you're certainly far more. I think you're certainly far more direct. But then again, maybe because it's a podcast, it's widely listened to. You're concerned about image.
I don't know
and
the
future
distribution.
clients.
I don't know if I expect 7,000 viewers or like 20,000 viewers.
Latent
The
Space
second
podcast.
thing really was, I'm not gonna lie, I had 9 to 6 meetings, and then the interview
Yeah, I
was
know.
at 8 p.m.
Pre-training. I saw. You shared your calendar. Yeah.
So I think that day I was just like, I don't even remember what I say or like, yeah, it was wild.
It was good.
One second.
Yeah. Yeah, Brian is here. Just that I think his background is probably too noisy.
Oh.
Oh, and we actually have people on the stream saying that they have been listening to the podcast. Wait, are we live? Oh, yeah, we're live.
We're live. Let me just close some tabs.
Is Brian on stage?
No, he is not. He's on mobile private chat.
Yeah, so can we bring him on stage? I mean, we can't hear him. Brian, why don't you try saying something now? You're on stage.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
I was chattering.
You sound like a airline pilot.
You sound like you're in a typhoon.
I think of myself as a captain sometimes. If it sounds too bad, let me know and I'll jump off. But I'll mute when I'm not talking.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I can just go ahead with that question I was asking. I was asking Jason like just before this, and he hasn't responded yet. Is sometimes Jason works with a lot of engineers and who may not have a really data science background. So I was asking him, how do you sometimes convince people to just do that analysis or to build that simple prototype before they just go all out and write the design doc or fix it on a certain design decision or do the implementation? Because it can be quite expensive, right? You could spend months doing something and then realize you're on the wrong track. Whereas the analysis, even though it's expensive, even though it may take a week or two, delay you, but it can actually save you a lot of time and help you look around the corners and the prototype as well. Sometimes I work with scientists who are just reluctant to prototype for whatever reason. Maybe the cost of prototyping is too high. Maybe they're just not familiar with building stuff with fast API or visualizing something or just doing data munging, etc. Yeah. So what are your thoughts, Jason? And I'm curious to hear if you have come across this as well and how it looks like.
Yeah. So there's like 2 types of things you can figure out in the world. One of them is a net new product. The other is some new feature on an existing product. The general advice I give to engineers, especially from the perspective of like the scientists, is more planning does not lead to better outcomes.
Okay.
And your time is valuable, and what I need you to do is justify your investment in some project. And it is easier to do that if you collect data and use that data to justify the next thing you want to build. So it's less of, and like sometimes collecting data to justify the feature is you go out, find training data. It could be you add logging and like inspect the logs, but like I need you to like show me that it's worth investing your time. Because sometimes you want to like you ask yourself like, oh, like am I going to engineer this? Is this like too complex? Blah 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 blah. But it's complex in service of something else, and it better be like moving some metric. Like you can't just think, oh, I think I should do this because I hope the results will get better. Even if you come back and say, hey, Jason, here are 10 examples of questions our RAG app is doing well. Here are 20 that I don't, and this is why I think I should try to change something to make these 10 better. And this is why it's valuable to make these 10 questions better, because they're being asked by the VPs, whereas the 10 that we're doing well are being asked by like a random intern or something, right? Like it's mostly about like convince me that this is a good investment of your time.
I mean, let me try to be a bit more specific. Let's say we have already decided that that's something that we want to do, regardless of whether it'll be a good use of time or not. But now we're deciding across various methodologies. And maybe someone's really fixated on some methodology, they read in a paper or something, whereas a more simple approach could work. And maybe we should just do some simple evals, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes, I don't know, sometimes people feel it's a waste of time.
I would just give them examples of when we had to do the simple thing and it was not a waste of time, which is every time. like I would just go like, hey, this is your first time doing this. Let me give you like 3 or 4 anecdotes of why like we deployed logistic regression and a neural network, and we only found the neural network was like 1% better.
Or maybe not even better.
Right. Or like we chose to use like SQLite versus some distributed database, and we realized that like we never got to a scale that mattered. And I really value your time. Right. On top of that, I think it's also incentive building, where you need to be in a company where the culture is not one where complexity is rewarded. Complexity is rewarded when you do something crazy and then you get a promotion because it's crazy, even though it might not have been like better. So there's like 2 things there as well.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with both of that. I wonder if Brian, you had any thoughts on that, given as you're a people manager yourself. If not, if you're busy working.
I have 2 things here. The one is related to sort of like, when is it time to do some evals and when is it time to start building? We've been transitioning on my teams to have eval creation as part of the product spec, because when you're building AI tools, the correct version of a product spec should involve some like really good examples of what things look like. And so this is actually like, we're going through this right now where we're adding this to our process. So a product spec isn't finished until it includes some evals. That's the first thing. On the second point, I think Jason's right on the money in terms of this like sort of like incentives matter. Making it clear to people that they are incentivized to have something like baseline and to have something that they can compare to is a really powerful mechanism. Telling people that they're not allowed to sort of like work on a more complicated version until they have that baseline is what I teach my students in my master's course. Like, they're not allowed to do their final project if they haven't presented a baseline during a proposal. And their proposal is basically them explaining the difference between an appropriate baseline and what they plan to do. So I do think that it is about incentives, and I do think that like that's the way of things. I don't necessarily think that like engineers are more difficult in this way than data scientists, though. I think both suffer from sort of addiction to complexity.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was actually like, let me think. Here is an example, right? So I was talking to this one founder, and they were like, "Oh, do you have any advice on how we can make Llama 2 and its limited context window perform as well as like how we're using Sonnet, because the context window is really getting into our face?" And I was like, "Oh, why do you want to do that?" It's like, "Well, we want to improve the latency." And like, okay, what is the latency? And it's like, "Oh, it's like 16 seconds. We think we could be faster." It's like, okay, what is the point of this? It's like, "Well, we don't want users to complain about the latency." And I was like, okay, well then like right now, what is the latency of the entire pipeline? Like, how do you go from request to a final answer? And so, that takes 10 minutes. And it's like, okay, clearly like the trade-offs are not worth it here, right? I think we get stuck on complex tools that have no clear answers as like also a way of like procrastinating. And I would also want to like call that out of just like, hey, is part of this planning really just procrastination? Because I think that is the case for a lot of people too. Like, if you just wrote the dumb version of the code, you would have something to share. But if you like keep planning and keep planning, it's like a intellectual procrastination.
I think that makes sense, and I just I've just started to take a tweet on this and just write down notes on what y'all shared, because I think that's very valuable as a reminder to myself. Yeah, definitely have a baseline. Definitely have a. I love the idea of the evals in the product spec. I'm definitely going to do that now, right? I guess the question I have is, I mean, Jason, you talk about planning, right? How much planning is too much planning? How much time spent evals is too much? Like, what do you think?
I'll let Brian answer this one first, because I have like aggressive answers on this.
So, you know, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I do think that it's not trivial. I don't think that you should never plan anything. As much as like my internal like hacker vibes make me want to just get my hands on the keyboard, ultimately when you're dealing with more operational overhead, planning is really essential. However, I think for me the question is like, what is the objective of the planning? Is the objective of the planning like productivity theater? If so, then I think this is where Jason and I are both like, fuck that. Get that out of here. But if the objective is planning to minimize thrash, then that I'm pretty interested in. And so, like, just keeping a really clear focus of like what your planning objective is, I think that's how you keep it tightly scoped. That being said, it is always a push and pull. I've never at one time ever felt like I've perfectly nailed the balance. I think you're always sort of adapting, and sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. So that's been my experience, but I certainly wouldn't go the minimalist zero, but I think that it is easy to get into productivity theater mode.
I agree with that, and I'm gonna go first before Jason goes with his aggressive answer. I think that we should do as much analysis and as much prototyping as needed to get just enough clarity that the approach is going to work. So if there's just way too much uncertainty before you deploy this one thing, that's just going to take you weeks of effort. And if your judgment is usually right and you feel that your intuition is telling you that something's going to be off here, we probably need to pick around the corners a bit with more analysis. I think we should definitely do that. That said, I cannot remember a time whereby I actually regretted doing too much analysis. Maybe that's just hindsight bias or something, but I definitely can think of several times where I regretted not either pushing myself or pushing my team to do that analysis, to do that evals, to do that technical feasibility. And it often comes back to bite us with extra work, unplanned effort. That's my take.
I think it's a skill issue. Okay. So there's two things, right? Like, what is the purpose of the plan? The purpose of the plan is not to like have a plan, I think. The purpose of the plan is that it is a process that you undertake to like learn more about the problem.
Yep.
And so like when I do a lot of planning, I don't like end up even like feeling like I have a need of presenting the plan now. Like I now know what I need to do. And again, this is an artifact of the fact that I am usually like what my work usually is not working with like 20 people on a giant project. Right? Most like for the past 5 years, my work has usually been like, what is like the top 3 like most important things I should be tackling? Where should I like sub in? And so for me, it's like I just do research to like estimate the value of like how it can contribute and then just contribute. So like I have to preface with that because that's like this is why I think planning is for yourself, is not for the audience. Whereas like, you know, to minimize thrash, that's something I'm just less familiar with.
Yeah, that makes sense. That perspective helps a lot.
Let me push back on one part of that, Jason. So recently you were talking about how having your EA coordinate your meeting locations and defrag your calendar has been really valuable. Would you agree that that's like a type of planning that's preventing thrash in your day?
Yeah, but I guess it's like that's not. I think that is like scheduling, right? But because my work is usually like very isolated, like I think one of my strengths is being able to estimate how long something will take me. And so in like the work sense, I feel really good about that. I think the thrash piece, I don't know if like scheduling my calendar is necessarily like a plan of work.
I mean, let me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I wanted to go on an off tangent. Something similar, but not
Here,
scheduling.
Brian.
No, Brian. Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, but there's a loud ass bus next to me. So 1 second. So I hear you, Jason. But look at it this way: your calendar is sort of scaffolding on itself. And one of the most valuable things that you can do in planning for your team is scaffolding. Which projects do you sequence and how do you set them up in contingency such that you learn from each individual item to make the later ones go more quickly and more effectively? That's the analogy that I'm kind of looking for. And I don't necessarily think that it's like perfect as an analogy, but that's at least what was in my mind.
I see.
And I agree with that. And just to add to that, sometimes you can tell if maybe the team is going about things the wrong way. But I don't know, you're not a manager. You don't have veto power. How do you try to gently nudge them towards finding the right way? Be it doing analysis or prototyping or whatever, or planning even.
Can you say the question one more time?
So Brian was saying that, okay, sometimes you have several projects and each of them ladder up to each other, right? So now as a consultant, maybe you're advising a team and sometimes you feel like the team is going the wrong direction. Maybe they're thinking of something way too complex instead of something simple, right? But yet you don't have veto power. You don't have managerial authority. You may have moral authority as the external expert, but how do you gently nudge them into what you think is the right direction to save them time? You can tell them stories about how simple always wins, but how do you do that in your role?
I'll go the Facebook approach, which is that at Facebook the general consensus is if you have like a short-term, middle-term metric that you can set goals against, you should be able to prioritize your work against that metric. And I think when teams are really disorganized, people either don't have a metric or have lost sight of the metric. Like the metric usually is never like make something complicated, right? Like I saw a tweet, someone replied to my tweet about like benefits versus features, and just like people don't want shovels, they want holes. And like if you're like spending 3 weeks like picking at the shovel, like there's no holes, like you're actually not winning. And you know, for some teams, I'm like, hey, the metric right now is not like improve the application. The metric right now is like I want all of you to think of like 2 or 3 experiments. Like I need you to like the metric is like number of experiments per week. It's not even it's whether or not it's positive or negative. Like we need to build the muscle of like just experiments, right? And let's set that goal for 2 weeks. And anything you do that you believe moves that metric, if you can justify it to yourself, like I'm happy. But don't like bullshit yourself, right?
I agree with that.
Yeah, I fuck with like number of experiments. It could be the metric is definitely relevant sometimes. Totally aligned with there.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know. I just feel like usually that's been the biggest issue. It's like they'll spend like 3 days just fiddling with like performance optimizations, and I was like, the goal is experiment. The goal is not to like make this experimentation faster. Like if it's not blocking you, don't procrastinate. Rapidly experiment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to influence a little bit better, like not just within my team, across team, and even across organizations. And sometimes it's just not easy. So yeah.
I don't know, man. I would just say something like, "What does success look like?" And then usually what you find is disorganized teams don't have good answers.
And then what do you do? How do you help them? How do you coach them, or even? That's the thing.
The planning becomes like I'll do a bunch of like one-on-ones and like calls and just be like, okay.
You just be the consultant and gathering requirements.
Yeah, like do you want better performance? Do you want to have like more integrations? Do you want to be able to make integrations faster? Is the goal to like reduce the errors? Is it like let's all talk about it?
So then how do you call out to someone, hey, don't kid yourself, don't kid anyone else. Your goal is to write a paper at this conference, or your goal is to build this system to get a promo.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes it's people don't know, but it's really obvious when you do that. Everyone knows. Managers, especially, they know. I know that bullshit. I don't know how to
I just kind of always go like the Socratic method of like, oh, so you agree this is the goal? How can you just explain to me like how
this contributes to the goal?
What's that goal? Like the goal is to like collect early user feedback. Why are we researching 20 different vector databases? Right? Yeah. Like is the goal, if the goal is to like be able to anticipate like 20,000 transactions per day, yeah, we should do that, but that's not the goal. The goal is to get data soon. So let's just spin something up quickly. If we need to migrate, we need to migrate. But unless we get the query data, we can't understand what the users want.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. And maybe that leads me to my next question, right? I was asking Brian, Jason, and I guess folks on my alternate Twitter, is like, can you actually, okay, firstly, how can you tell if someone is hungry and someone gives a shit? And can you actually coach someone to give a shit? I mean, Jason clearly thinks the answer is no. Brian, as a hiring manager, do you think the answer is no or the answer is yes? Or
this one's pretty tricky, in my opinion, to coach. It's something that I look for during hiring for this reason, because it's so hard to coach. But I think sometimes one of the painful things in life is that not everybody has the same values. If everyone had the same values, the world would be a lot easier. But because we don't, this percolates into things like what I perceive as not giving a shit, someone else perceives as giving a shit about a different thing. And so ultimately, it's less about do they give a shit, it's what do they give a shit about. And is that sort of accretive to what your goals are as a team? I've interviewed people that are really incredible and really, really give a shit about certain types of thing, but I kind of recognize that like no matter how successful they are in that dimension, it doesn't actually like push forward the goals of the team.
Yes.
And those are the hardest no's for what it's worth, like the absolute hardest no's, because you just find yourself thinking like there's nothing wrong with you, and you are technically like perfectly aligned for this job requirements, but you're also not going to be successful here, and you're not going to help the rest of us be successful. So I think I don't love the framing of people don't give a shit. I prefer the question of do they give a shit about the things that you need them to in that role.
Right. It's like it is one of it is identifying strengths and weaknesses, and two, like covering our bases as a team. But that said, yeah, like giving a shit is the vector norm, but it is not the vector direction. And those two also really matter.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
Right, like you could really like I can care a lot about moving fast and like experimenting quickly, but that comes with a trade-off too of like I will ship like buggy code, right? I do things that will try to avoid those. Like I try to write way more. I try to write tests more aggressively because I know I want to move fast. But it is like it's always going to be a trade-off, right? Like if you care a lot about quality and like making sure every like your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, whatever that term is called, you will move slower. And like if you're a startup, maybe I really don't need that right now. But
would it be all right if I walk y'all through a little exercise that I enjoy? Yeah. So I used to ask this in like every hiring screen. So consider the following motivators. One person is motivated by impact. They really, really care that the work that they're doing is going to have a very significant, measurable impact on the organization, the company, their team, maybe their personal brand. Impact is what drives them. And when they think about not just what to work on, but when they feel good at the end of the day or the end of the week, it's did they have impact? Another person is very motivated by helping people. Ultimately, what they want is their colleagues, their bosses, their customers or users, all of these people can do more and succeed more because of their efforts. Some people are really motivated by learning. All they really want at the end of the day is to get better every day. They want today to be plus epsilon, and tomorrow to be plus 2 epsilon, and so on. And some people are really motivated by working on cool shit. They want to know that whatever the hardest or most interesting or most dynamic area is what they are currently integrating with or interacting with. All 4 of these come together and have intersections, and nobody is like sort of like monodirectional. However, I often find myself learning a lot from which of these resonates with people. So one of those that I described, you probably feel like really describes you. And sometimes I can find that to be a really powerful assistant in understanding, are they interested? Are they sort of, do they give a shit? And how does the giving a shit manifest? So this exercise can be really effective because the next part of the exercise is for them to identify what they think the weaknesses are of having that motivation.
That's freaking amazing, man. I mean, when you were saying it, it was. I can talk about what I resonated with, and there's clearly one thing that I do not resonate with at all. But I was wondering, Brian, how does this help you understanding the motivations of your hire and whether they're aligned with your team or not?
So the dirty secret is that none of these are non-hires, and none of these are automatic hires. All 4 of these simply set me up for understanding how to communicate with the person, whether they're going to eventually be on my team or whether they're only going to be to the end of that interview. What I want to understand is, does adding this person to the team not just add capacity, but add a lot of capacity relative to the rest of the population of people that I could employ? As my boss sometimes calls it, wins above replacement. And I think this is a really reasonable analogy because there's a lot of smart people that just aren't a perfect fit for the role and the team and the manager and the atmosphere. However, this question helps me ask the right questions to understand where there might be challenges and where there might be sort of convenient low friction points. As a quick example, just to be really concrete, when someone says I identify with learning, well, that's awesome, because I personally, Brian, identify with learning. However, I also know the big disadvantage of being someone who's motivated by learning is that sometimes I will fall prey to exactly what Jason was kind of mentioning before. I'll over-plan. I will actually get so interested in the damn planning that I'll forget what the damn destination is. And I'll find myself getting looped into this almost feedback loop of, ooh, I'm learning more. Ooh, I'm learning more. Oh my goodness, I've looked at every fucking event. How long did I just spend looking at every fucking event when I could have just been building it based on 20 events? So that's my risky, that's exactly what Jason is worried about. And he's right to be worried if the person says that they're motivated by learning. So what that means is when they tell me I'm really motivated by learning, I now, for the rest of the interview and the rest of the interview process, am looking out for how easy is it to nerd snipe this person? How good are they at pulling themselves out of this sort of infinite well of learning, which is so valuable and wonderful, but can be quite dangerous when you're in a high velocity team. My team currently is very high velocity. If I bring someone on who's motivated by learning, I know what I'm signing up for. I'm signing up for me purposely coaching them to stay on task and stay on alignment with the rest of the team. So is it potentially wonderful? Absolutely. But it helps guide me both in the rest of the interview process and in the actual management.
That's brilliant, man, Brian. Can I just... Oh, sorry, Jason, go ahead.
I love that.
I love that, and I'm actually writing a tweet right now just because I just want to keep this. Can you talk about the cons of the other 3? Or the rest? But wait, I'm curious, Brian, Jason, which one do you resonate with most?
I mean,
if you could share, yeah.
For me, now, I don't give a fuck about learning. I haven't read a paper in 2 years. I just number go up.
Impact then.
Right? It's I only want to do things that are quantifiable. Right? So now, there's definitely weaknesses there, but I just like to build incredibly quickly and make number go up and be presented with like only the most ambiguous problem where I have to come up with number and then make it go up. Like if you told me like, oh, like next week you got to go set up like database connectivity and like all this stuff, I'm just like, I fucking cannot be bothered, right? But for me, like, I think as a result of that, I think my weaknesses are like, moving quickly. Usually you'll like ship things. You usually come to conclusions too soon, and then I just rescind them, right? Like there's been many times where like I do an analysis, I get excited, I share the results out, and I go like, actually take that back. This is like overestimated by a factor of 2. And so you just like develop those skills to sort of go, okay, well, like more tests, like, make sure we're measuring the right thing, make sure, there are other people who can like review the work that you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah.
That's brilliant, man. And I mean, to round it out, Brian said his more aligned with learning. When I first heard the first 3, I'm like, hey, shit, how do I even choose among this? But I'll tell you what people have told me about me, and they've written feedback about me in the annual feedback, is that I actually help people. They say that Eugene is a great teacher or educator, and I'm like, what the heck? That doesn't even make sense. I don't like teaching people. I don't know. I don't think I like teaching people. I feel like I just want to just be doing more. But what a lot of people say is that, hey, I actually spend a lot of time with them, helping them understand the science and methodology of it. And the weakness of this is, and this is very clearly also written my feedback across multiple people, is that I spend too much time trying to bring everyone along when I should be probably more of a dictator. So that's interesting feedback for me, and I'm definitely going to have to change that behavior.
Yeah, I love being the dictator.
I think so too. I actually like that. I think it actually helps us move faster. But the feedback I get is that you're spending too much time trying to convince other people and like get consensus and try to teach people about this stuff.
So one additional sort of bonus part to this is, how does this intersect with things like levels? So this is also my answer for levels, which is basically like transitioning to an experienced engineer is learning which of these categories you identify with. Transitioning to a senior engineer is understanding what the negatives are. And transitioning to a principal engineer or a leader or a director are understanding how to take those like cons and not just work through them, but understand when things are going to be out of your control and purposely bringing in the right partner to compensate for your weaknesses. That's my grand thesis on how this intersects with leveling.
Yeah, this is like exactly the Facebook. Like all Facebook managers are told to read this one book, and that's like basically it. Let me go find the book actually.
What's the book?
Yeah. What's the book? I love what you said, Brian, because that's the feedback I always get. Eugene, just escalate. I'm like, no, let me try to figure it out. I'm trying to do this without anyone losing face and get everyone convinced and on board. But I'm like, okay, maybe I should just be escalating more. But Brian, I'm curious to hear about your hiring manager's point of view on the weaknesses, the potential weaknesses of each of this impact, helping people and building cool stuff, and how you have to be aware of it. Because I think that's actually very helpful for everyone to know.
So in my opinion, it's pretty dangerous to opine on the negatives of others. So I usually try not to tell people what the negatives are. I'm looking for them to tell me what they perceive. And I usually can tell if it's like a good answer or not. Like if someone tells me like, oh, well, the negatives of like helping other people are I care too much. Like, no, you don't. Get out of here. I don't have time for you. Like, that's a bad answer. What's not a bad answer is a different framing than I've previously come up with, because ultimately this is about you and understanding yourself. And that's really what this is all about. Also, as I mentioned, I think this connects a lot to leveling. So I'm looking for people that are senior plus, which means I'm looking for people that not only know where they identify and can say with clarity, this is what I identify with, and then can say with clarity, these are my weaknesses. If you've not gotten yet to the point in your career where you know where you identify, and more importantly, that you know what the risks that come with that are, then like my roles may not be right for you because I'm mostly hiring people pretty senior and pretty advanced in their career. And that's not to say that like other people don't deserve awesome jobs and have the opportunity to grow. It just means that right now on the sort of like tight team that I'm working, not quite the right fit. However, I want to add one more thing on this topic. I've interviewed people that are very junior, and one of the ways that you can really stand out as a junior is understanding things like this, because what it shows is that you've got the right mindset to accelerate and grow really, really rapidly. This is like when you talk about massive upside, this is the kind of thing that creates massive upside. This is how you run past other people that are like sort of like peers as if they're standing still. This is how you do it.
Love it. I'm kind of disappointed Brian didn't want to talk about how to account for the weaknesses. But I think
I can roast Jason. I can roast Jason.
Roast me. Yeah.
So I'll roast Jason for a second because he said he's motivated by impact. Being super motivated by impact means that you are short-term focused. You're too short-sighted. You're constantly thinking about what's the next big hit. And you're thinking so deeply about having impact that you fail to prepare for the future. I don't claim that's Jason precisely, but that's the common thing that I see with motivated by impact.
Love that. Now roast me next, please.
Do it.
If you're so focused on helping everybody else, what about the stuff that you're being relied upon for?
Fuck.
We're going to give you work that you own, that you're responsible for. Like, should I always be planning to only give you work that facilitates other people? Isn't that kind of my job as your manager? Like, that's a lot of my responsibility is to facilitate success. I can give you some projects that have that like multiplier effect, but sometimes I need you to use your technical brain and I need you to execute.
I love that so much because that is exactly how my charter is written. I have an internal charter that I align with my my managers and my director, and that's exactly what is written in there.
I hope that's not triggering.
Pardon?
I hope that's not triggering. Sorry.
No, it's not. It's not. It is exactly because that is my weakness, and it's very clear. It is very clear from my weakness. I've been trying to work through that for a very long time, but I just cannot help but feel the need to, like, if someone's struggling, I just can't help but poke my nose in there and just help them figure it out. But I've gotten advice so many times that sometimes you just need to let them fail and figure it out themselves. You're not really helping them if you're helping
you gotta
them.
do like the economics of your time versus their time.
Exactly. But the thing is, my time, I can always just stretch more. I can always work longer, work harder, work on the weekends. But there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
It comes at a cost, Eugene.
That's why all my writing on the weekends, it's you. If you look at it, it's very, very aligned. If I look at the pattern now, it's somewhat aligned. Actually, it's aligned with the first three, but the second one, there's a clear pattern there. Now, Brian, please roast the last one. I think the weakness is pretty clear, but
yeah. So if you're motivated by working on cool shit, it's easy to think like, oh, this is the weakest one. Like, you don't want anybody on this. However, recently I was talking to a guy, his name's Cameron. Cameron is very much like, point me at an interesting problem and I will bust down that wall. I don't really give a fuck like what the problem is or like what it requires me to learn. The way that he just like interacts and engages in problems, you see such an incredible like passion and power. And so if you are all this time thinking like, oh, that one sucks, nobody should say that, question yourself, because I think some of the really disruptive companies have been built on the backs of people like this.
I fully agree. And I fully agree that we do need people to dig deep into this because that's what pushes the step change improvements, right? But I think I can say for myself and maybe Jason as well, I'm not that interested in that. I'm really more interested in the real world impact and actually how people's lives are improved.
So I was just checking the message. Was that directed at me?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
I am gonna post this, man. Wow, this is brilliant from Brian.
I keep accidentally giving away my interview questions on various public conversations. This is the second time this has happened.
I am actually gonna. I think I'm gonna reuse this, and I think that this is valuable for getting to know your team. It's almost like MBTI, I guess, to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm overthinking this, but this is brilliant.
I never understand any of the personality test things, so I'm not familiar with the one you're talking about. I always forget the names.
Yeah, I've always found it hard to apply as well. So now, Brian, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the levels. Like when you said senior, it's like knowing what the weaknesses are and how to mitigate them, and then like P or director is like knowing the cons and also how to complement them, or knowing that you shouldn't double down on your weaknesses, but how to get other people help.
Yeah, I think seniors understand what their weaknesses are, and they can answer that question with confidence. They can say, "Yep, these are the areas I get into trouble. These are the things that I've done in the past." And man, like they're not all the same, but they sure do rhyme. That awareness, I think, is like senior level awareness. And then principal and sort of like director level is, you know what? I've been doing this long enough that I know this is a trap for me. And like maybe I can like sometimes avoid it, but when I start to get into danger, I know who to look for that doesn't suffer from this same trap, and I'm going to bring them in actively. I'm going to proactively bring this person in. There's some relationship here with like managing up, because one aspect of managing up is knowing when you're in danger to let your manager know as soon as possible. I had a manager who was sort of like, any negative information or negative news, if you give it to me the second you know it, I will almost instantly forgive whatever went wrong. But if you don't tell me as soon as you learn, you're in trouble for this. And I found this to be really helpful in learning to manage up better. And I still am sort of working on this personally. It's an area of growth for me, of being like, this is getting dangerous. I better loop in somebody else. So, yeah.
So then, other than people, what other what mechanisms are there to address these weaknesses?
Tests.
I do think reps is one of them. Having more practice, having more experience, seeing more situations play out. Sometimes you also learn to work through them. You just sort of can overcome. You talked about like you're a helper. One thing that you do is you just work weekends. Yep, that's a thing you can do. Like you can work through it that way. It's not good, but you can do it. As someone who's like motivated by learning, like, well, I'll like build systems to help me learn faster, or I'll sort of accumulate more and more knowledge so that my like analogies are more powerful. I can learn more and more quickly. This is sort of standard grad school approach. The more you learn, the faster you can learn new things. So you do get better, but I think the really senior behavior is bringing in other people. Are you familiar with collective intelligence?
Yes, collective intelligence.
So it's this idea that like what makes us human is not like intelligence, but collective intelligence. And like, I think there's a lot of power in collective intelligence in the workplace, not just being 500 individuals, but being 500 individuals with interactions and collective learning. So that's my other argument for why you should bring in other people.
Maybe I should ask Brian the same question I ask my managers and my directors all the time. But if I'm bringing other people, I'm just giving them trouble, right? It's like, why can't I learn how to figure this out myself? Why do I always have to cause more work for others? I mean, and they always say no.
Build your own house?
Pardon?
Did you build your own house? What do you mean?
No, of course not that case. Yeah.
They get paid to do this. like it's different
that's true.
as you're like design front of like making a website, but like
yeah, that's just it. What's the multiplier? Can they do it in 1/50th of the time it's going to take you to learn yourself? That's probably the right trade-off. Let's use Jason's metrics for a minute. Let's be impact oriented. If it takes them 5 minutes, that's valuable. Save the company that money, but also
your time is
learn. Learn from them. Work with them, and don't be passive. Don't let them do your work for you. When I worked with Jason, like it wasn't Jason, I need this framework to do this. It was Jason, let's talk about this framework. That was how we worked together.
Exactly, and I love that. It's like when I write a weekly update, and sometimes my updates include bad news, and my director reads it and it's like, okay, do you need to step in? It's like, no, give me one more week. And then the week later, sometimes I'm able to resolve it, sometimes I'm not. And if I'm not, then that's when I bring them in, because I'm trying to get the reps in, right? I'm trying to be less dependent and trying to be able to do more. But I think you're right. Sometimes the trade-off is there. The trade-off is my time, my energy spent on trying to resolve this stakeholder issue or this influence issue, when it's just easier bringing them in.
I would challenge you, Eugene, the next time you're asking for more time on anything, take the amount of time that you're asking for, cut it in half.
Sweet. Okay, I'll do that. Sorry, Jason, I cut you off.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah, I also want to. I want to hear Brian's take on this, because when you're talking about senior, junior, it's still from like the perspective of like maybe I see a manager. Like one thing I've been thinking about too, from the hierarchy of like doing business and being an operator. I don't really remember what the exact rules are, but it was like in the lowest level of abstraction, you are trading time for money, and you're doing all the work yourself. Then you are learning to like ask for help. Then you learn to like assign work instead of just asking for help. And then it becomes like, how do you attract the right people so you can assign them work? Like how can you like move vision, all that. I forget what the other ones are, but at some point you just end up becoming like, you are like allocating capital. It's like the last end, right? It's like, it's not even time, it's not even people, it's just money. And then like after that, like all of my founders that are like 10 years into the game, their only two questions is like, who else can I hire and where can I put the money? I
love that. I love that.
But it's true, right? Like
totally.
At the highest end, it's just recruiting and allocating money, because the money is coming in because you're in a business, so it's only allocation. And recruiting is not allocation, in the sense that like you could give people money, but they need to want to take the money. And that's what the recruiting part aspect is, right? It's like I need to go find the director of AI. I need to go find so-and-so, because this is how I can then allocate more money. Anyways, just want to throw that out there as a thought necessarily, not a comment necessarily.
I totally vibe with this. And Jason, I would even think about the following. Who does a lot of placement at early companies for senior roles?
Founder.
They're investors. Their investors are deeply involved in that placement. Why? It's exactly what Jason's saying. Because at the top level, they're investing capital. They're investing capital to solve a particular problem. And that's also why they want to place those people, because they want to know where that capital is going, which is ultimately into those people.
Yeah, like I've been like, my goal with the angel investing stuff effectively is trying to figure out like just like experiencing that end. Like I have some notions of capital allocation because I have like payroll now, but it's like not that much. Angel investing is like not that much, but it's like very quickly what I realized is one of the highest leverage points as an investor or as an advisor is just recruiting. Like 15% of my time now is just like meeting smart people and then convincing them to join my friends' companies. But that, like, if you put a monetary value to that, that's usually like $40,000 for a hire. Like, if you think about how much someone pays for a recruiter, it's like, dude, the value of like helping someone find talent and then pay them money is like so much more than necessarily than like the work I could have done for them in like a week. Anyways, just some other thoughts.
No, I agree with that. I actually think that, and I keep saying this, I think that the single most important thing that a person can do is to bring in good talent. Because you could build a system, right? And you get 1x unit payoff. But if you bring in a good talent, and maybe in the first year they get half a unit payoff, in the second year you get 2x unit payoff. And that's how I try to convince people that, hey, doing interviews is really important. Onboarding work is really important, because I think that's the way to grow the overall capability of the team, right? The team is going to put out systems, put out products, and those are the golden eggs. But what's really important, I think, is the goose, right? And the way to grow the goose, to nurture the goose, is through hiring well and, of course, cultivating the goose.
It reminds me of another one of my like tips to people that sort of want
Brian's
to
on a
level
roll
up
today.
and want, yeah. Like people that want to level up, I often hear them tell me like their plans for leveling up or what their like strategy is. And I often find myself thinking, it's weird that you didn't list interviewing new hires, because that is such an incredibly important component in not just like becoming a manager, but also like learning about what people are looking for and learning about how to sort of like be invaluable. I mean, that's ultimately like what leadership and sort of like raising through the ranks is all about, is becoming more and more and more valuable. Not just in an obvious like more dollars, but like also more opportunities. So I think people really underestimate the value of interviewing like candidates.
Oh, yeah. Why do you think that is? Is it because the hit rate is so low, or is it because it's so tedious, or is it because
I think people think they're above it. I think they think that it's like some like low brain thing. They're like, oh, man, it's just like asking people the same questions over and over again. How's that like edifying? And it's like, it's pretty fucking edifying. Like, yeah, I've really been surprised how many people think they're above this.
Yeah, because I think as the advisor now, it's like, oh wow, interviewing is probably the most short-term impactful thing I could do. And like,
and long-term, both short-term and long-term.
6% of the interviews, they're bad. I wasted my time. But when you get a good interview, it's immediately obvious that you have to stop asking questions and just start selling them.
Yeah.
Because the moment I get a good interview, I'm like, fuck, like, how do I, like, what are your interests? What are you looking for? Like, here's like the biggest version of our problem, and let's like set expectations. And it's like, I now know that there have been hires that we've made at like some clients' companies where like I was a deciding factor.
Ah, wow.
And I was like, I fucking know that like before they joined, they were like, what is Jason's involvement in the company? Like, is he here for like 2 months, or does he plan to be here for like a much longer? And I was like, holy shit. The fact that they asked that right before they signed, I was like,
That's huge, because I guess they want to work with you, right? They want to learn from you.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's about just adding credibility. Like, I know to join a company and be asked to like perform magic. Is it like realistic? Like,
yeah.
Like if I can't be like, I would not feel good about being the first machine learning engineer at like an early stage startup. Because like unless the whole team is AI, you're just like, can you make agents? And you're like, fuck, man. Right.
And to emphasize the point of strong hire, right? I mean, I've been in interview loops. Like, there was once I was trying to hire a strong experienced hire, or a senior hire, and we interviewed like dozens of people, literally dozens. Then there's this one person, holy crap, she was like experienced, and just blew us away. Firstly, this person blew me away, not in the exact domain, but the amount of energy, the way of methodical thinking, how rigorous, the depth that they went through in their own passion. Usually I almost never give highly inclined, because highly inclined almost means like I'm going to put my badge on the table. If you don't hire this person, I'm going to quit. In this case, I put highly inclined. We brought this person on the team. Holy crap. In the first 3 months, the amount of impact and everything, it was like just setting this person up for way bigger things. It's almost like we had created a clone of like one of our top performers and just put them there, right? And that set up the team for so much more work. Like now, the possibilities of what we could ship in our roadmap has expanded, right? Because we had this one key critical hire. So I think that's very valuable. I mean, for folks who don't think hiring is valuable, I think that's how it's valuable.
Yeah. Recruiting is so fucking hard, man. I feel like.
Why is it so hard? That's the thing. Can't an LM do this? I don't know. I think that's why a lot of people default to looking at.
Because recruiting is about selling. Recruiting is sales. Like good recruiting is sales. It's not sourcing.
I think it's part of it as well, but I also think it's really hard to separate, to identify good people that fit with your team. Like, do they have the same values as your team? I think it's very hard. And
you're in a different level because you're at Amazon.
Maybe, yeah, okay, that is true.
Want Amazon, people like know there's going to be money. There's no risk.
They just want the name of the. Maybe, yeah, that's true.
For a startup, it's like there's a reason I'm not joining startups.
And that reason is?
Huh?
Yeah. What's that reason?
Potentially work-life balance, long-term vision.
True.
How realistic is the technology? You know, there are things that are more realistic and less sexy, and there's like more ambitious things that are more sexy but less realistic. And like, I don't want to join a company for 2 years. I want to join a company for like 6 years. Right?
Yep.
Like, that's why like, we talked about this too. It's like, oh man, like, Meta looks really good right now. Like
it does, and they're building a lot of. They're really full on integrating it and actually making use of it.
Yeah.
Building practical applications. My wife was just showing me Meta.ai and what image generation, chatbots, and Instagram and all that crap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna get the data you want. Like it's funny. Every time I interview someone, I was like, "Hey, like, what's your biggest challenges in like building out these models and deploying them in production?" And if they don't say getting the data, like I just know I can't hire them right away because just like like you need to understand that like you join, it's gonna be 8 months of fucking monitoring. Like,
I see.
Because we're so young, right? Like
yeah.
Like on Amazon, you're gonna show up day one. It's like great. Like we have existing models, we have 1 billion records. Go train a model. Here it's like I'm trying to like push the VP to like can we do more sales? Because the only way for me to get more data is like do more sales.
More human feedback, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first joined, within a week, I was able to plot charts on how people were interacting, were reading books. So freaking amazing. Some of the infra we have is just bloody amazing. And it treats everyone like an adult, right? Everyone has admin permissions on like AWS accounts, right? So that's quite refreshing. Conversely, I've been in other places whereby everyone has no permissions. You can't even install software on your laptop, right? I'm sure we've all been companies like that.
You need to go to IT to like create a GitHub repo.
Or like you need to request, I want to update my R version from this version to that version. Need to go to IT. It's like I've heard horror stories like that from other people, or Python version, or install PyTorch and all that crap. I guess in finance, it's especially prevalent. Brian.
I was gonna say, sorry, what's R? But I was just trolling.
Yeah, shut the fuck up.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind if I switch sides for a bit?
Go.
So I think we're all in a hiring mode right now. And like, what would you say to like applicants? Like, let's reverse the problem, right? We're all like, hiring is so fucking hard. No one's good. Everyone is weak. Like, blah 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 blah. Let's switch it around. I'm curious, like, what you all have to say.
Like, what do you mean? You mean like how will you pitch
how to be a better applicant? How to be a better candidate? How to like demonstrate interest in these skills or whatever.
So I just hired 2 people, both really successful hires. Really excited about both. And in both cases, pretty quickly, I felt confident that they were aware of both the opportunity and the difficulty in building AI applications. You talked about like if they don't say that one of the hardest things is getting the data, that's a no. And I think actually like I think that's a really respectable like thing to look out for. Like how realistic are their expectations in general? I don't expect the person to like know the function calling API as well as JSON. I do expect them to be aware of the fact that like sort of most of these models have APIs. Roughly the shape of those APIs is X, and there are some differences between the APIs by different models. That's it may sound like a pretty low baseline, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
here's one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Like, oh, go on.
No, you go first.
Something that I ask when I interview for companies that nobody has ever asked me, which is, again, this might be a reflection of like my interest in impact. I really love asking the question, if I discover something that is important and has to happen, who do I go to? Because the Facebook answer was always, you like look at the code, you find the engineer, you go in the fucking seat arrangements, and you should just like go up to them. Sometimes it's like, oh, you would like probably let our VP know, and then we would like make us a ticket, and then right? At Stitch Fix, it was very much like I am incentivized to just go do the thing, right? Actually, it's like one thing I really like to learn about companies. It usually tells me a lot. Yeah, that's all I had to say.
So how would a candidate demonstrate that?
No, I would just like. So it's for the candidate. It's a good question to ask.
For the candidate, it's a good question to ask. I see.
Because it tells you a bit about the culture of the company.
I guess one question I always love to ask, and I think half of the companies actually fail at this, is that what is your 3-month plan and 1-year plan? So I'll give you an example of there was a company that actually failed at this. It's like there was a director and there's a VP in a interview with me. I was like scared of heck, right? But then they were not that very impressive. And then like within half an hour, I was like, I just turned it around, just go, hey, can I ask a question? I was like, hey, what's your plan for this quarter and for the rest of the year? And then they were stunned, right? I was looking at their faces and they were stunned, and I was like, oh, we're gonna increase hiring diversity. We're gonna hire people from different ethnicities, or we're gonna focus on gender. And then another one is like, oh, we're gonna have focus more on learning. We'll focus more on learning and have a conference budget. I was like, okay, that's really cool, but how are you gonna help your customers? How are you gonna contribute to the bottom line? And it's like, oh, we're gonna migrate from TensorFlow to PyTorch. Okay, they didn't actually say that, but they definitely said something about migration. I was like,
Brian heard TensorFlow and left.
Sorry, Brian. And I was like, I was not impressed. I just felt like the captain at the helm didn't really have a clue, and that was just that was an immediate red flag to me. Yeah. So I think if it depends what kind of hire you are. If you're really senior and you're there to set direction, maybe this is not as important. But someone always has a manager, right? Unless you're a CEO, but then the CEO already has a board. Yeah, exactly. So you need to know if your leader, do they have good judgment? Do they have a plan, right? Clarity of vision. Yeah. That's what I think is important.
Yeah, there's been times where like a senior like engineer has asked me, he's like, oh, are you guys mostly focused on like shipping milestones, or are there like really metrics we're setting goals against in the next couple of quarters? Like that's a huge.
That's cool. Yeah.
I'm just like, fuck, we're just surviving. You know what I mean? Like,
and both of them actually, I can think of valid answers for both of them, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like, we really got traction. Our goal is to like, get our like incremental like CAC down. Like we want to improve LTV, and if we can do that by like 20% based off like our user acquisition, we're gonna be fucking rich.
Yeah.
Right. Like, maybe that's a good answer. And the other times I'm just like, yeah, like we're really excited about getting these new features out. The goal really is to get this into the market, et cetera, learn about the product. So it's like both work.
Exactly. And like what you said, right? Sometimes in your podcast, it's like sometimes the outcome is the experiments.
Yeah.
Right? Even if it may not move the needle on the A/B test, it's fine. But sometimes, of course, you do have business metrics that you need to care for.
Yeah.
So
That's another
yeah, Brian
one.
lost service, so that's why. I don't know if he may join again.
Yeah, I mean, what else? What else do you say to like candidates? I mean, some of them have just directly like, "Oh, Jason, do you feel like you're behind on this LLM stuff? Because I feel super behind." Like, why would you say that?
I have a bunch of interview questions actually. Let me pull it up.
Oh man, can I ask you my interview question?
Yeah. Oh shoot, I'm gonna flunk it.
I'd love to learn like about like a really exciting project you worked on and what kind of like interesting challenges and trade-offs you had to make to get that thing into production.
There's so many of them. I actually have a design doc for which there are 6 design decisions. They're certainly not one-way doors, but they're really expensive two-way doors. And
like that's a crazy answer. To me, I'm like, oh my God, like tell me, like I'm about to learn something.
It's like, and some of them, we've made some decisions that I regret. Right now, right? That's why I always ask you, if we had done this analysis or we've done this prototype at the start, we would have known that this is the wrong path. But we've taken a decision that is not a one-way door, clearly, but it's expensive, right? So, and that's the thing. I'm always trying to. A lot of people say, shots on goal, everything, but I'm trying to be more precise. I'm trying to help the team make better decisions, help myself make better decisions, and the team make better. So I think that's a great one. That's a great question. Let me ask you, I think another great question that I think everyone should ask for your hiring manager, and I'm sure Brian would agree with this.
Yeah.
What determines success of a person in this position? Right. For some people, it's like, iterating fast. For some managers, it's like iterating fast. For some managers, it's like going deep. For some managers, it's like, we're working with some really difficult stakeholders. You're going to have to deal with that as a senior or as a PE, right?
Right.
So that's really valuable.
Oh, are you making that tweet? Are you making the tweet of like, what are good questions candidates?
Oh, shoot.
Okay.
What are good questions to ask? What do you say yours was?
Interesting challenges and trade-offs. Oh, this is the question I ask into candidates. No, mine was if through my analysis and my tinkering I find something that's really important for us to tackle, how do I get it prioritized? Right. So it's around the culture of like decision making.
Exactly. How do I get prioritized? Let me write mine out now.
Like you can imagine what is like Tesla's answer.
Go to Elon. Email
like
Elon.
7 word like I emailed Elon, but maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like we have a very strict roadmap, very strict deadlines because there's like things we got to deliver, so we have to like be ruthless in how we prioritize. Like, okay, but yeah.
And one question I love to ask, and almost sometimes the interview and the hiring process just ends there, is
you asking candidates or you asking interviewers?
Me asking interviewers.
Yeah.
Can you share 2 to 3 names of people that used to work for you but don't work for you now? It's like, and if they can't, sometimes people be, yeah, sure, I work fantastic with this guy. At a point in time, he wanted to grow in a leadership position, but he couldn't. We just didn't have space in this, and I'm super happy for him go talk to him. And then sometimes people will just, it's like, hey, that guy's fantastic people grower. That guy has fantastic vision. That guy is fantastic operator. Like, you will learn shit with spending 2 years with him. It's like, that's the guy. It depends, right? In this case, I'm trying to get better, right? So I'm trying to find people that are better than me.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question. I think it's the same as the question you said, which is like, okay, like, how would someone in this role like deliver value early in the first like 3-4 months of joining this team? Right. A funny one that caught me off guard was just like, when was the last time someone in your team like did something nice for you?
For a hiring manager? That's cool.
Yeah, no, I was the interviewer and they asked me that.
Oh, okay.
Like, wow. Like I offered to like be a judge for the company hackathon, and then the CEO like sent me a pottery book.
Wow. What company is that? That was Stitch Fix?
No, it was Trunk Tools, and I was like, oh, I'm really happy with. I was really happy with my ability to answer that question, right?
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Let me send this out now. Man, today's Gen AI office hours is less of Gen AI and more like hiring and
I mean,
career.
my whole
I
past
yeah.
month has been hiring. I'm about to meet like another head of data for a different like series like D company, and it's gonna just be around hiring.
Oh, he wants you to help with hiring?
Yeah, they just like in this new
You
way.
know, this is really interesting. I just saw this tweet from this guy, George Mayer. If you want to keep getting promoted, don't bring your manager problems, bring them solutions.
Yeah.
And I can think I can think somewhat like that's a little bit of my reluctance to escalate, right? I'm trying to firstly I want to try to solve it myself, try to push myself harder to solve it myself. But like you said, it's maybe not worth my time.
Oh yeah. Oh, here's a question I also asked. Maybe write this one down. How can I make you look good?
How can I what? How can I what?
How would I like if you're my manager? Like what could I do to make you look good?
Yeah.
Like how could I
make you like a rock star, right?
Right. Like what does that look like?
And all of this is actually the same thing of what does it take to be successful? Actually, I think that's way better. How can I make you look good? Yeah.
Right.
Because delivering value does not necessarily make you look good. I mean, there are other ways to look good, right?
Yeah, because you could, like, as a data scientist, you could just like say, I don't think this other product team needs to exist because the product is terrible. Like,
exactly. You know. And that is, in some case, delivering value by reducing costs, but and it's also like figuring out the right decisions.
Question: what would make what could an IC do that would make you look good? Actually,
what could an IC do that would make a senior IC look good, or make a manager
like you? Like, do you have an answer to that question?
I mean, my dream is for fellow scientists to be able to step into my shoes and just take over my work. That means that I have been able to coach them, right? And
so like someone who's coachable.
And coachable is the spectrum of what's coachable is very broad, right? It's like a lot of my work is not just technical, right? It's like diffusing stakeholder tensions or helping the team come to the right decision. And that's why I keep asking Brian and you the same few questions a lot of time. Is hunger coachable? Is judgment coachable? Or is it only hired, right? I like to think it's coachable, but secretly I'm a little bit pessimistic about that. I've been trying for very hard. It's not always working.
I can't believe that it's coachable. Like being told to work harder is coachable, but like the intrinsic hunger, like that's like childhood shit. You know what I mean?
I think so.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, I have my answer actually. Like here's my answer for what would make me look good.
Okay, go for it.
I really look good when you're able to like quickly answer the questions that I have like prioritized, right? Like, because like I usually have like clients that like ask me questions, and there's experiments I need to go out and run. And so if you can if you are able to prioritize well and like deliver the same work, just ordered very well, that would make me look good because I'm able to give others answers quickly. Right. So if you can prioritize and like understand how I prioritize, that's one thing. Another thing that makes me look good.
So you mean they can prioritize without Jason in the loop? In the sense they have already the judgment of Jason has osmosized into them.
Yeah, like what I don't want is like, hey, this came up. Can you drop these things, move this around, and then like tackle this thing first? And just understanding that like, and if I don't give you that, being like, okay, like, when does this need to happen? Can you like tell me how to prioritize? Because if I say, oh, like let me get that answer to you, and it comes back in 2 weeks, I don't look as good.
That's true,
right? Because that's the shape of solution, right? Another one that like makes me look good is like producing good quality content. Like the quality of Ivan's like what's it called? Like AI engineer talk.
Yeah.
Is like a reflection of my like ability to like manage and mentor and coach, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So
answer is like pretty hard actually.
Exactly. So if someone can step into your shoes and do the same thing that you could do at the same quality, it means that. So in Amazon, like one of our leadership principles is hire and develop the best. I don't think I have that at all, but a lot of people tell me I have that. But that's why I'm like trying to think harder. Okay, maybe I should try to figure out how to double down on coaching judgment, coaching hunger. Right. So I know.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm getting so much drama from OpenAI.
Why?
Just like learning about things on their roadmap that I will not talk about on stream.
But you can't. Okay, let's turn off the stream, guys.
We'll turn off the stream and I'll tell you about it. But I was like, oh
Yeah.
wow, they're working on that too.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel FOMO and want to go to OpenAI or Anthropic or Meta?
Listen, man, I've been rejected from OpenAI like 4 times. Yes and no. I also recognize the work is very hard and like that's not the direction. There is financial upside, but
yeah,
I also think I could like the short-term goals could be like obviously like joining OpenAI and like getting lucky, you might get like 10 million at the end. I don't think I can like get 10 million at the end of consulting.
Not just that, you make a lot of impact.
Yes.
Like a shit ton of impact. Like more impact than maybe in the top 10 companies worth of impact, right? iPhone level impact or PC level impact.
I think, I mean, if I got an offer, would I join? I would like 80% join. It's just about like how would my hands feel and like would I move to SF?
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And like,
I think Meta has offices in New York. So
yeah, I used to live across the street from them.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah, so it also just depends on who your manager is. Like so much of quality of life is actually dependent on your manager, not the company.
Let's talk about that. What do you think are the things that matter to your quality of life at work? I actually have 3 buckets, and I actually don't know if they are equal or not. But
I'm not working here.
Okay, so but do you like based on your recollection at Stitch Fix or whenever or even in your consulting role, what do you think really matters the most?
I personally believe. Okay, I won't say what matters. I'll say what matters to me. I want to work with a team that's obsessed. Like, I would love to be part of a team where no one thinks, "Oh wow, Jason's working really hard." Yo, Thomas, you want to join? Thomas, let me just copy the link because Thomas is like one of my best friends.
Oh yeah, bring it up. I don't DM.
I sent it.
All right, sweet.
So I want to work with people who are obsessed. I want to work with at a company that has like good upside and people are like I want some level of financial motivation. Because that at least suggests us like want a metric. Because there are times where like we're making money and people are like wasting their fucking time, and I'm like, man, you are taking like food out of my mouth. Like, maybe that's a little toxic. And then lastly, I want to know that like my leaders can handle confrontation and my CEO is right. I need to believe that my CEO is right. Right? Because that lets me focus on my work. Okay, let me introduce Thomas.
Yay!
It was like one of my best friends from college. When I got my job at Systrix, the CEO was just like, "Are you as good as Thomas?" I said no, and then I got the job offer immediately. So,
what's up, buddy?
Hey, Thomas. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. How's it going?
Great. I don't know. I was asking Jason what matters for quality of life at work. I wonder if you had an answer.
It's a good question. Kind of depends on what your objectives are.
Well, so like, then.
Sorry, what?
actually just for you, like you personally right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, the answer changes over time, right? So for me, earlier on in my career, right, I joined Stitch Fix. There was a few things that attracted me to it because it's like a clothing retailer. Especially at the time, we only sold women's clothing. It was like, sorry, what? You're in like algorithms and data science, and you want to work at like a fashion retailer for women? But the thing that was pretty cool was that, like, one, the business had really strong fundamentals for like growth. It wasn't like VC fueled growth. And then the second thing was that there was like a crazy amount of autonomy, and I was not working in a cost center. Like we weren't like algorithms wasn't like a, shoved underneath like finance or marketing or engineering or something like that. It was its own department that went all up. So the combination of those three things were like, okay, the company has some patience because they're profitable. They fundamentally respect the thing that you're interested in, via that we like reported up directly to the CEO. And so early on in my career, and they had like a strong culture of autonomy. So early on in my career, it was like, okay, you get some job security and you have a long leash to go at a young company to go like hog wild and just build crazy shit, which is what we did for like 5-7 years. And later on, so that's would be my answer to the question, like earlier on in your career. For me now, that's like not what I'm optimizing for. But I'll like pause there if that's like interesting at all.
It is, and I'm so sorry to throw you such a hard question, Thomas. It's just that Jason and I were riffing on this, and I was like just curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then for the balance stuff, like when you're at a bigger company or something like that, I mean, I just hopped into the stream maybe like 5 minutes ago, so a lot of the stuff that Jason was saying is like, larger companies are optimizing for like stability, not necessarily competence. And so the consequences of that are, you if you're on a team, you want to be on like, you don't want to be pushing too far ahead of your teammates or going out of your lane a little bit, because that causes like great instability. And so you say like, okay, well, given that the criteria then is be careful about what team you choose to be on that like aligns with the things that you want to do personally. Because like, yeah, pushing too far ahead actually causes a lot of problems. Say
more about that. I'm curious. What kind of problems? So I mean, I guess what you're saying is, let me be a devil's advocate here. What you're saying is that, okay, you can't push too hard because this is going to cause friction or cause problems. Like,
yeah,
could you elaborate?
Yeah, so I mean, the basic thing, if you're like pretty good at what you do, the tendency is in like an organization, like people are gonna ask for help, as they should, right? Like we're all on a team here. And your tendency is gonna want to be to like push forward and just kind of like do it for them or solve the problem or build a tool for them to do it. You're kind of like robbing the people asking the questions the opportunity.
So funny because we literally covered this as like one of you.
We did.
This is.
Yeah. Sorry, again. You covered this one.
We just spoke about this on the stream. It's one of my weaknesses.
Okay, it's like the most common weakness of like people who code, like individual contributors.
Yeah.
I feel like you don't really appreciate it until you get bit by it a few times. But the problem is people get like so trapped by being helpful that like the only out that they see for themselves is to quit. And that actually causes like a huge blast radius when the person leaves. Yeah. It's like everyone's like, oh crap, he also watered the plants. Like everything's dying, right? People just have no clue how much you were doing. And then they spend like months and months and months trying to catch up and understand what you did. And so they like, as a result, like they know this, organizations know this. And that's why they actually try to like, not penalize, but disincentivize people from like pushing out too far, because they know that it's like a huge risk for when that person leaves.
I understand better now what you're saying, and I fully agree with that. The feedback that I always get from my managers and my directors is that Eugene, you gotta do less. You gotta stop being a crutch, right? And the thing is, no, I can't let them spend 3 months on this when I know the right direction is not to do that. But I was like, sometimes you just gotta let them fail. I was like, that sounds crazy to me. Yeah, I'll let someone spend 3 months going down a rabbit hole, and I still don't fully understand it yet. Yeah, I'm trying to learn.
If you think about it this way, like if I was the operator of my business, at the scale that I'm operating at, 3 months of like total revenue is like non-substantial. But a high leverage like principal or like I think Thomas and I I feel like we could comfortably say like we were probably like high single-digit percentage of revenue in terms of impact, right? Like I wouldn't say like 9%, but like if someone's like, oh yeah, like $100 million, like yeah, like those are the salary. I feel like is like if you run a good business, salary is not like that much of the margin, right? Like I would hope that like you're not like salary is like 80% of the money you spend and like 20% is profit, right? Like I would imagine like for Amazon, 3 months of salary is like what, 50 grand max.
And that's why my mentor
50 grand.
And that's why my mentor 3 months of salary, 50 grand. I think it's probably a bit more than that. But that's what my mentor tried to explain to me, right? There's like the tangible benefit and the intangible benefit, right? Like, okay, what you're gonna do is gonna bring the customers and the business that amount of tangible benefit, but you're neglecting the intangible benefit, which is building up the team, building up the capability for them to deliver this tangible benefit themselves, right? So I've often in the past I was so focused on the golden egg, but now I'm like shifting back to focusing on the goose and not giving the answers all the time, like being more Socratic, even though it's slower. I can see the intangible benefit there for the team and for the organization.
It also kind of like goes into there's like an is-ought fallacy sort of going on with this stuff where it's like, I think a lot of what Jason, you and I described is like an accurate description of what is and how these like businesses work. But I think you can also make an argument that they ought not to work that way. And I think that's what like the most frustrating part, like it's entirely sensible why this works that way. And it's by design, it's not by accident. And I think that catches a lot of people who like come out of school, are high achievers, join a startup, and then it grows, and then they get like wickedly frustrated. Because when you're a startup, it like they encourage you like go wild, and we're all gonna get rich together, so we know you're gonna stay. And in fact, we're gonna get rich because you went out and did all these crazy things. But then it transitions at some point. And so on the like is ought sort of thing where it's like, okay, this is a natural descriptor of how businesses evolve, but like I think you can get into some interesting philosophy around business management where there's probably great benefit to being able to design parts of a large organization that can explicitly operate not like that. But first of all, if you're just like an engineer, and the first question was like work-life balance as an engineer, like focused on like what you can do. I don't think you can really do anything with this as like an individual, but it's an interesting thought exercise to go through, because if you can identify it out in the market, that would be a great team to try and go and join.
Yeah. And I guess to round it out, like I just want to share my answer for the audience on, I think there are 3 things that really matter a lot in trying to find a good position or team. And if you can find if you can find 2 out of 3, I think that's pretty good. The first one is very similar to what Jason said, right? Which is that you want a team that's obsessed, right? And I tweeted about this a lot. I want to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, kinder than me, push harder and faster than me. If I could find that, I think that's a dream, right? You want to find people who run faster than you. The second thing is, of course, your manager plays a big part, right? whoever's managing you, like they have to have good vision, good judgment, right? So that you at least feel that way. And the third thing I think is meaning. So let me ask you this question, Jason, Thomas. If a tobacco company, how much would a tobacco company have to pay you to get you to work for them? Or weapons company, or whatever.
Weapons is different than tobacco, I will say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, like maybe it's just regular cigarettes, or like, you know, something that really doesn't benefit people. I thought about this a lot, and I do have an answer for this. Is it like 2x more, 3x more? Is it like an absolute number? But that's yeah.
I can imagine if I had a family and like private school is coming up.
Damn it.
My answer would be different.
That's my answer, actually.
Right? Because like, I don't know, I spend like $110 a year. Like, I don't need that much. I have like no expenses. I just like I'm just like a dumb boy, right? But I can completely believe that there is a number. Even like right now, there's no way. Like I wouldn't go to like San Francisco for like less than $1 million. Well, like that's just like a goofy, stupid person number. Whereas like I think in real life things can really change.
Yeah, that's what I mean about meaning, right? I mean, I think if you can find good team, good manager, and good meaning, I think that's like the jackpot. And it's not easy to find, I realize.
So my boss and I had a conversation. I'm going to dodge the question a little bit, but I'll come back to it. My boss and I had a conversation, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. And we were trying to identify what personality traits reliably, not exclusively, but reliably led to strong performers on the team. And one of the things that we identified around the meaning question is that some of the best people were able to make any project meaningful to them. They were able to turn, so he had some example, he worked at Netflix, and like earlier on in his career, they asked him, they wanted him to build, what was it? It was, I believe, I might have the details wrong, but it was rough, the rough shape of the story is accurate. I think they asked him, they wanted him to build like a web scraper so that they can compare their product or their product catalog, like how many movies they had, against competitors that were like popping up or whatever, to see what like content licensing deals they should go chase or something like this. And that is a very boring project.
Really? But okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just like on the technical front, like you, like the first time you do a web scraper, you're like, oh, this is awesome. But like once you've done it like 3 times, you're like, actually,
long tail sucks, right? It's like someone uses the website, you got to come back and like, oh, like I'm on call to like fix the crawler.
Yeah. It's tedious. Anyways, and so like he basically went off and he like created this like super cool thing that they could then go use. Like he basically created a tool instead of just creating the crawler. He created a tool that made it easy to create crawlers, and they ended up using it for other different things. But his manager at the time had to come and like stop him and be like this is not what we asked you to do and whatnot. Anyways, so there's 2 lessons in that story, right? Like one is like, you know, stop being an engineer and trying to make a tool for everything. Just like do the job instead of like writing code to do the job in this sort of like meta, like writing code to write code or prevent you from having to write a code. You know what I mean? Like, and then, but the second lesson around the reliability thing was that like, okay, that might've been the wrong behavior for him to do at that time in terms of like creating the tool. Like that's actually not what the company needed. They could have used his time working on another problem or whatever. But the personality trait that led him to do that made sure that like, no matter where he was thrown in the business, he was always successful. Whereas some people will get thrown in and they're like, I don't find this interesting, blah, blah, blah. And they like drag their feet and don't really do it. And they sort or like, you know, claim to be into it, but like their heart really isn't really into it. And then as a result, they're not thinking about it in the shower and like no progress is really made. So I think about that with the meaning question about like, oh, tobacco company or whatnot. I'm like, well, like my answer would be, it kind of depends on the specifics. Are we talking about a tobacco company? Are we talking about a porn company? Are we talking about
it's a company that clearly harms people?
Well, yeah. But then what I mean is that I don't have like a generic answer for it. It depends on the specific company that I'd have to evaluate. It's like, can I find something interesting in it? Right? Like, I don't have a personal problem with a tobacco company. Like, that's not a moral qualm for me. So for me, it would be an easy yes. It's like, is there a cool thing to go do it? Right? It's like, for me, a cigarette company is no different than an alcohol company. In moderation, it's your life, do whatever you want. Right. But that's like a personal thing. So I'm just the reason why I went abstract there is because like, I get at the motivation. And I think that there is something about the meaning interesting to say about like finding meaning in your work. But that question, I feel like you have to tackle on a very specific basis.
I love that. I just wrote that. I just recorded that and tweeted it out. Man, I'm learning so much like in this chat.
Thomas is great.
Yeah.
A conversation like this, like
very wise. Thank you, Thomas. How do I find you on Twitter? If you're on Twitter, how do I find you on Twitter?
It's my name with no vowels because I came up with that handle and that was a cool thing to do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, JXNL is also my name with no vowels, and like no one can ever find us.
Yeah.
Is it H Thomas Miller?
Yeah, Thomas Millar. If you search that Twitter, it should come up THMS MLR.
Thomas is the creator of the Elixir version of Instructor.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was actually just working on that before I hopped on. I was integrating Llama or playing with the Llama 3 7dB.
Via like Ollama?
Initially Ollama, just to like, whatever is the quickest way to validate a like little test prompt that I have. But now I got it running through Llama CPP with the server locally and got the chat template hooked up and all that. So yeah, it's did you know, at least for the one prompt, it works pretty friggin' well.
The Llama CPP creator was a friend from high school that went to my art program.
Wait, what? Really?
Really?
Yeah.
I thought he lives in like Romania.
No, Llama CPP? No, not. Also, Python. Llama CPP Python. I forgot.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought you said the OG.
No. For some reason, I heard Llama CPP Python, not Llama CPP. But yes, no. GG, like Gregory is not my friend, not my friend from high school.
Gotcha.
Sorry, my bad. There's something else I wanted to ask you, but I forgot. You've been most of the time. Are you interviewing many people these days?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
I
don't do any hiring anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I've been doing hiring and recruiting for startups, and it's like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Wait, why?
Yeah. Huh?
Why?
Because like the good, like really acceptable people basically can go anywhere. And like convincing them to choose you is now like really difficult.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm like, if it was a crazy company, I would likely just join full time. So the fact that I am also not full time is like not like it's a signal, but it's like it's a predictor of like how sick the company is, right?
Yeah.
So it's just hard to hire because it's all like, yeah, it's just I've only interviewed for like Facebook and Stitch Fix, and we're just like, we're gonna give you $500,000 and you're gonna basically do like a post grad for fun. It was like so easy.
Yeah. It's like in your blog post, right? You're like I've never had to interview for a job, basically.
Well, no. I feel like people think this. I never got a job from an interview.
That's the more precise way of saying it.
You didn't interview for Stitch Fix?
I did, but it was like over ping pong. No,
so it wasn't an actual interview.
I hooked him up with the job.
So as an intern, I interviewed, but my full-time interview was just like, oh my god, like, hey Brad, how's it going? Hey Kyle, how's it going? Yeah,
that's cool.
Wait, what is this message? 50% incredibly useful advice. 50%. Let me show you what this Jason guy on Twitter said. 30 minutes later, where did they go? What?
Do you delete tweets or what?
I don't know. I don't delete any tweets. All I do is I schedule tweets. Yeah, what else has been on? Do you like Llama 3? Like, is it smart? 7 billion?
I've only tested with one prompt, but actually I got thoughts on the hiring thing.
Oh, yeah, shoot.
I basically haven't hired since ChatGPT released. And I think I think the impacts of it haven't really been like observed yet in terms of being able to hire quality engineers. Because like, okay, how do you say this? Like if you have a good engineering team and a good business, you're making like 10 times more than you're paying them. And people talk about like the 10x engineer, mythical 10x engineer or whatever, but like the margin, the money doesn't lie, right? Like if in aggregate we don't produce more than we make for the company, we wouldn't be they wouldn't pay us what they do, right? No, but the difficult part is that there's a lot of, unless you're trying to do something super ambitious, if you're just trying to like make money, that was the only vehicle that was available to a lot of engineers in the past, because they were basically unwilling to like learn things like marketing or all these other sort of things. So like, okay, well, what's the easiest way for me to make $500,000? It's like, well, I could continue doing what I love and only what I love and just join Facebook and deal with like, you know, get paid a bunch and not have to worry about starting a business or anything like that. But like, since you have ChatGPT and then they get hired and then they go through these like, you know, seniority process where they end up just writing Google Docs anyways, not doing what they like. And then they become like lazy and all this sort of thing, right? Senior engineers get lazier and lazier as they get more senior in like a good way, but mainly to their own detriment. It's not that getting lazy as an engineer is a bad thing. It's just like how it manifests in a corporation. What I find kind of interesting that since GPT-4 was released, the threshold of effort to like get good at things that you would write off before. You're like, oh, I don't want to learn marketing, all this sort of stuff. Oh, it's a pain. How do I test it? Yeah. Well, now you just have a conversation with GPT-4, and like, so long as you have like the balls to just go and try it, you can learn many of the other skills to become like a junior quality. I don't know why I just thumbs down, but you can become like a junior marketer in like 10 hours of conversation with GPT-4, and then learn like the next thing, like, oh, you need to understand the basics of like legal for starting a business. It's like 10 hours. And so what I think you're going to see is that like a lot of really good engineers are going to become even harder to hire, because either they're getting paid like millions of dollars at like Alibaba or Google or whatever, OpenAI, or the ones that aren't those like AI researchers are like, yeah, I can just like release a few products on my own and just like build this up over for a few months. And then it's just like, you couldn't pay me enough. Like if I had that, you couldn't pay me enough to join your company, because like, I don't want to deal with your shit. I got my own shit and it's making money and I don't have to work hard, you know, and I just got to play with technology on Twitter. Right. And like, I think you're going to see way more of that over the next like 5 years. It's going to be great for junior engineers because like they have ChatGPT and they're going to be able to like build cool stuff. But like, it's bad for employers because they're not going to, you're like, all the good engineers are basically going to exit the industry after like 10 years because they create their own little side business and they're just like, cool, I'm going to go, you know, golf or whatever.
Thomas is also the creator of Better Dictation.
Oh wait, shit! I'm a fan. Thank you, Thomas. Great. Yeah.
You use it?
I use it. It doesn't work with my Dovret keyboard, but I switch keyboards. I think I wrote you an email.
Oh, I gotta fix that. Yeah.
I like that. I love that. Yeah. I've been selling it. I've been shilling it with Jason's.
Awesome.
Code with his code. I don't know how much I don't know how much he gets from that, but yeah.
Check out Stripe right now. I gotta get my payout. So funny, but I gotta wait. I guess you're not hiring, but like, why do you think it's good for junior people?
And why do you think senior people inevitably exit tech companies?
Because they get rich. Senior people exit because they get rich, and
then it becomes more fun. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like they exit the company because they get rich, and becomes more fun to work on their personal projects instead of something in an org with bigger scale.
Yeah, totally. There's just a lot of like dealing with those things at bigger scale. Like unless you're like, oh, I want to put like a man on Mars or something like that. Like most companies aren't like that, right? Like comparing to most things that are ambitious, most companies are not actually that ambitious in terms of meaning, right? And so they're like, okay, I'm already rich. I don't want to deal with all this bureaucracy. The money doesn't matter. I'm just going to play with technology on the side. And then on the junior end of the spectrum, a junior engineer who properly uses like Cursor and, ChatGPT are like just as productive as the engineer that has like 5 years experience, the intermediate engineer or whatever the right title for that is.
Yeah.
And the intermediate engineer was never good at like designing architecture anyways. They were just better at coding. Right? Like what qualifies as like, it's like you have junior engineers who can like hardly write code and like they need to be supervised and have all their PRs reviewed. And you have intermediate engineers who are basically like, they can't design anything, but you give them a spec and they can roughly implement it and you can trust them to go through the process correctly. And you have senior engineers who actually do all the designing and also write a bunch of code, but mostly do all the designing of like, what ought we build, right? So you say like, okay, the only differentiator of an intermediate engineer and a junior engineer was that they were just faster at doing the same thing. But there's a categorical difference when you go over to a senior engineer where you start designing things. And so my point with ChatGPT is that it basically makes those junior people as good as intermediate people. Go ahead.
Can we talk about title inflation at some point too?
Yeah, sure.
Because I feel like half the senior people I've interviewed have like not designed things.
I mean, sometimes it's just based on tenure, but it really depends on. But I actually want to double down on what Thomas said, because there's a slightly opposite view in the sense that, senior people, as you become senior, you're just writing design docs and playing with Figma, right? But then with ChatGPT and all this coding assistance, it allows them to build systems. It gives them higher leverage to build systems without relying on other engineers. So in the sense that what that means is that junior engineers may be less needed. And then the case is when junior engineers go for an interview, a lot of times now the bar just keeps getting higher. It's like, oh, let's talk about designing a Rexis. Let's talk about designing a retrieval system. And because they don't have the experience for that, it becomes harder for them to get that. So I'm just, your point of view is very unique. I'm trying to reconcile my world model of how to hire and what's happening for industry. So as an example, of what's happening here, whereby the same amount of lesser people can do more, is that there's this company, let's just call it a brokerage company, flashy brokerage company. They started with 700 people. They had 700 people and 7 VPs. The start of this year is 450. And the end of this year is going to be going down to 200. So essentially they're shrinking their workforce by 3/4. Because the same amount of people can actually do more. And I was asking, okay, are they deprecating features? No, they are building new features, keeping the lights on, everything's running smoothly. I was like, okay, maybe it's just inflated at the start. I actually don't know, but it's hard for me to imagine something getting so inflated that you cut off 3/4. So I said, no, we have found ways to make ourselves so much more productive. And it's just really simple things like Cursor, or like use like AI for like code reviews and everything. So I'm pretty blown away, and therefore I'm also like a little bit concerned for what's happening to the industry. Is it like too many tech people? Is it too inflated? But so what you're saying is kind of reminds me that, okay, maybe I need to, my assumption is wrong. So, yeah.
I don't think it's wrong. I just like undeniably there's just going to be fewer jobs. Like we're talking about like different kinds of engineers, right? So if you have your junior engineers and your intermediate engineers basically collapsed now, and it's collapsed by bringing the junior engineers.
There's no more middle class.
There's no more middle class of engineers. Yeah, exactly. There's no more middle class of engineers. And so now you have like 3 times the number of engineers chasing for these jobs, and we need fewer of them because the senior, as you said, the senior engineer can now leverage himself more by using these AI tools and whatnot. You can do more with less, right? And so this one, I think it's going to be bad for those middle engineers. It's going to suck for them because their salaries are going to go plummet. Right? Or rather, they're not going to find jobs and they're going to plummet, right?
In the sense that they sort of stagnated, right? They just can't push the next level, and their work can almost. What you're saying is that they are better than junior engineers only in terms of coding, but now with AI assistance, that is somewhat automated or augmented, but they have not been progressed at the next level, and so Yeah,
I totally agree. But the economic ramifications of that, what I think is going to be is that like engineering salaries on the low end are going to go way down, and it's so hard to get a job. But like if you're a business owner, you can just get like Facebook used to do this back in the day. We used to joke with our buddies who interned at Facebook. I don't think I ever made fun of you for this, Jason. I should have. We used to joke. I had a group of buddies. We lived in like San Francisco. We were all on an internship, and like I don't know, we're doing a road trip to like Santa Cruz or something. We're going to Santa Cruz on a weekend, and we swung by the intern housing at Facebook to pick up one of our friends, and we're like, we gets in the car and we're like, "Hey man, how was summer camp?" You know, we like joke about Facebook because they basically, I don't know, like 2011 to 2014, they were basically like an intern mill. They designed their engineering org to be like, okay, we're going to have a few really senior trusted engineers that oversee churning through these interns who are just going to like write tons of code for us and, you know, the ever expanding surface area of the Facebook product. And it's not complicated code, and we're just going to manage it in this sort of thing. Right. And like, I feel like there's a big business opportunity to have like more companies do that just with the power of like AI. Right. And so that middle class of engineers, like, I don't know, felt like it didn't really exist at Facebook. You just had like the really strong people just managing an army of interns.
I see.
And so you're going to have like the labor market is going to be, or like salary is going to be pinched because the labor market's going to be way bigger. But you're right, on the senior engineer, you're going to be like way more leverage. There's just going to be a big chasm in between the two.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
In a sense, I never thought about it that way. Then how does someone progress? How does someone grow the skills? Okay, is it like junior immediately jump to senior, like step change after designing 5 systems, and then they sort of gain that judgment?
Yeah, I don't know about like the title in terms of like gaining the skill. Like you just have to do it like you in any other skill, right? It's like you have to go out and try doing it and then stick around long enough to feel the consequences of your bad design and like try to get feedback on it.
Yeah, Jason talks about this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think both Thomas and I have like learned some lessons, right? Like
yes.
Some.
Yeah.
We've definitely learned lessons.
For sure.
Yeah. But I don't know. That's gonna be hard. I feel like people are also gonna change jobs soon because also like so many more startups. Like I just don't know how. Like if you join a startup today, like how long will it last? Is it gonna be like a 5-year thing? Is it gonna be an acquisition? Like what are you really building? Like I think a lot of machine learning folks are like joining startups and realizing they'd rather just do research because not many things are like that ambitious that someone with a lot of skills and passion would try to tackle. I mean, like, and it's primarily because I don't think you just don't need to make $1 billion anymore.
As a startup?
Yeah, like I am very confident if like Thomas and I decide to partner up, like we could make like $4 or $5 million a year. Like, you know, like I feel like we could just figure it out. Like
as independent developers, right? You don't need to be part of a company.
Or like I don't know, like I would probably do a product over a service, right? Like I think if Thomas like decided to be very aggressive, like we could just do something, right? So it's like, okay, I don't need to make $1 billion, which also means like the scope is not that ambitious. Like I can just sell like scrub that, you know. I don't need to change the world. But then the really skilled people are like, damn, well, I kind of do want to land someone on Mars. And those companies now are in like a way more comfortable position because they're so ambitious. The talent goes there.
Yeah.
Right. It's like with trunk tools, like when we're recruiting, it's like, oh no, like the RAG app is cool, but like the thing we're actually gonna do is like the value of preventing delays in construction is like way larger than like helping a drywall installer figure out what floor they're supposed to work on, right? You have to go sell the super ambitious thing. And like, I don't know, a lot of the companies aren't crazy enough. Right? Like, even through my 2 weeks of doing a bunch of like angel investment calls. A lot of these things are just like not that ambitious, and the ones that are ambitious are like, oh man, like I could probably actually find someone that wants to work for you. Right? But like it would be hard to like find a great engineer to work on like better dictation. Because you're like, that's not the goal. That's not even your like intentions.
I think the meta then on hiring would be, I don't know, I'm just kind of like riffing here, sure. But like it feels like the right play then is, if you're like starting a company, make sure you start it with the very strong senior engineer who can coordinate a bunch of interns, like, you know, using the Facebook model, and say like, don't try to hire the good engineer. Just make sure it's on the founding team where you can properly motivate them with like equity, and then just leverage like junior engineers and contractors until you have made enough money profitably to just buy your way into getting Jason on your team full time. If that's even what you need at that point, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think the best companies I know are doing that. It's like founders, full equity. You hire like a good like engine manager, they get equity, and then you just hire like an overseas team. Like they're like good developers. They're good developers, and they also probably care a little bit more than like some random like person that might just join a different startup at some point in the future. Like contract developers are really good once you find who they are.
Yeah.
Sorry, another message.
Yeah, I think one thing, Thomas, I want to tell you about better dictation. I think Jason had introduced it to me, and I was like, that can't be true. I mean, speech to text is janky. And then after I tried it, it's not. And I loved it so much. And you really spurred me to think a lot about speech, right? And then I just iterated, and I built this AI chatbot, AI therapist with voice, because I was so enamored with voice, right? I was like, hey, voice is really a brand new modality, right? And then I built it, I put it online. And then so many people have used it. They've given me so much good feedback. And I've been thinking a lot more about voice, right? I sell books at a bookstore, and I've been thinking, okay, I want Morgan Freeman to read this book for me. I want some person to read this book for me. So, and I think a lot of that was motivated by you. I mean, vector dictation getting me to think about voice as a modality that is useful, which is, I mean, everyone's very, very much into vision and images and movies right now, right? And clips, video clips. I think voice is quite underexplored. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, totally. It was the realization that, like, I found it kind of funny when Stable Diffusion popped off, whatever it is, last summer. I think that's when Stable Diffusion came in. Like, everyone was going crazy about it, the LLM stuff. And I was like kind of thinking in a more historical view of like, we had like 3 or 4 new modalities invented at the same time, which is like kind of crazy. Like everyone's focusing on like, actually, let me be more concrete on that. Like the cool thing about LLMs is that like when you had unstructured text, you basically couldn't do anything with it. You couldn't interpret it, right? And that's what LLMs, it's this machine that like nominally lets you interpret unstructured data from text. So that's cool. That's like a new tool set that we haven't had as programmers. But at the same time, like everyone was focused on that. Stable Diffusion did that for pixel data as well, which once again was like, okay, we'd have some like filters or whatnot, just like you could like, you know, title case a string or something like that. Okay, we had filters for pixel, but like you couldn't really actually operate with pixel data in any like meaningful way other than like editing. And then like at the same, and then you have voice open up as well, right? So you have like voice, unstructured text, and like arbitrary pixel data, and like now cool stuff happening with video. I mean, like we don't really have access to it, but like it's coming, right? And you're like, when in the history of computing have you had like 3 form factors drop at the same time, right? It's like, what was the last ones? It was the iPhone, right? Or mobile phones in general, but the iPhone. That was a new modality of compute where now you can rely on the fact that there's a billion devices that have GPS in it and like cellular connectivity. And then, you know, 10 or 20 years prior to that, you had the internet, which was like, okay, everyone has a computer in their home, but like now they're networked together. And like, that's a new form, that's a new modality, right? And then the original thing so you had personal computers, then you had the internet, then you had mobile phones. And that was like one at a pace of over like 20 years. And you have 4 that drops in like 18 months, 4 new modalities, right? And you're just like, oh man. And the fact that everything was like a chat bot at the beginning of like the form factor, I was just like, oh man, we're not even like getting creative on the UX side of things, right? Like you can start to do some really creative stuff if you really start thinking about it in that more abstract, like form factor kind of vantage point. And you're starting to see that now, like people, like everyone's with their little the pendants, right? The voice and that connection. Oh, that's a cool little form factor, leveraging these two, you know. But you're gonna see more.
One thing, like there's this really essay that I love. I forget the title of it, but they were saying how like using a mouse and a keyboard, a mouse and a click to interact with a computer is as prehistoric as like the point and grunt.
Yeah, like it could be that years later.
Is the same thing as you going like, right? That's like with LLM.
We just need a neural link. Yeah.
Right, but it's like we've finally gone beyond that, right? It's like there's the keyboard and that's like text, but we're still just like grunting into a computer, right?
I love how Thomas compared it to the mobile phone and the internet. And like you, Jason, when LLMs first came out, I was using GPT-3. I was not impressed with few shot prompting for summarization and everything, and I was quite a skeptic. So when it came up, I was asking smart people I know this question. I'm going to ask you this question again. Now you may have a little bit of the benefit of hindsight, but I'm wondering how you think. Do you think just LLMs on its own? Do you think the magnitude of impact is on the level of personal computing on a mobile phone, or do you think it's on the level of internet combined? Is it on which level, or is it way bigger than both of them, or like less than that? My answer has changed a lot, like over the quarters, but I'm curious about your take on that. Like,
I haven't really thought about it.
Wow, Jason,
that's like a good question. I just don't. I'd have to think about it more.
Can you ask that question one more time? I was
sorry. So the internet did a lot, right? The internet did a lot for humanity, right? And then of course, giving everyone access to the internet in a personal phone, in a personal device, did a lot as well. So now LLMs, is that on the same level as the impact? On which of this is, same level of impact, or bigger than that, or bigger than both the internet and personal computing? Because if you think about it, you could put an LLM in every phone and everyone would have their own personal coach, personal tutor, personal assistant. Yeah, I don't know.
No.
I have a way of thinking about this that just occurred to me is you think about like, does it expand? When I brought up like the new modalities, I wasn't necessarily think of it being bigger. Like the definition of bigger is more of like the surface area of life that technology goes into, right? So like once you had the internet, computers became way more useful. You started using them more. Mobile phone, it was like net expansionary for the surface area of computing.
Yep.
I'm not sure with LLMs and voice that it is going to expand the surface area of computing to the same degree as the internet and
either
phone.
of those. Yeah.
I just more mean that like, hey, when a new modality drops, there's new business opportunities because you can renegotiate past compromises now that you have new technology.
An example could be like Instagram. Once you have enough fast enough internet, you can actually upload photos. You couldn't do that before. Right?
Yeah. So like that is the lens through which I would try to develop an opinion on the question. I still don't have an answer. That's just how I think about it.
Yeah, I have the same view. When I ask a lot of VCs this question, they always say, no, it's definitely way bigger than both of them combined. I am skeptical.
Wait, they think LLMs are bigger than the internet?
And mobile phones combined. Like the opportunity is way big. I don't know. Okay, so I don't know. I'm skeptical.
On what time scale?
10 year, a decade or
like,
two time scale?
Like, what's the temporal distance between CERN, internet, and like Wi-Fi, and then the different Wi-Fi to like 3G? Like, what's the time scale? 20 years? 10 years?
I'm sure Thomas is typing into Claude or ChatGPT now. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, sorry. I actually just have a hard stop. I was just gonna jump in and say thanks for having. I gotta actually run. But it's good meeting you.
Take care, Thomas.
Yeah, because it's like it's been 2 hours.
Man, it's late. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I also don't think it's on that big of a scale. But that said, I actually wonder if I have a blind spot, if I'm not thinking big enough, right? And that's one of my weaknesses, right? Like if we try to push it, can we push LLMs and this kind of intelligent compute and retry and self-reflect and think step by step into everything if we just diffuse it into everything? Can we give everything intelligence? I don't know. I don't know. That's the thing. So
I think it's
yeah, maybe it's not LLMs, maybe it's like LLMs and machine learning and self-driving cars. Like, yeah.
I think if we gave LLMs to everything, it would be like a low double-digit performance increase, the quality of life increase, right? It's like, especially in this like chat with your X model, I don't think it's like very compelling.
No, that's not that. Yeah, it's definitely that's not the. I don't think the
that's
rest
like
of
a 5%, 10% improvement in like utility. Yeah. Like,
I mean,
like what
I
are
don't
the
know
things you could not do before, right? Like the difference.
I can.
No internet is like you had to walk somewhere. Like you saved on gas thanks to the internet.
I mean, so let's think about this, right? With the internet, anyone can study from Stanford, right? I mean, they put their lectures online. Anyone can benefit from a medical education. With an LLM, anyone can sort of have this feature.
I think we're using internet as like too broad of a thing. It's like really, it's like data transfer, and it's like the velocity of data transfer, and the fact that like we went from wired to unwired,
and all of humanity's knowledge in this amorphous blob somewhere that anyone can access.
Yeah.
Right. If you think about it, LLM is almost like a compressed internet, but can be customized.
Yeah, you're going from days to minutes. Like when you go from minutes to seconds, the impact is not the same, right?
I see. So what you're saying is that internet was far bigger impact and LLMs is incremental,
like,
but not step
to get
change.
knowledge without the internet, I have to like go to the bookstore or like go to the library and check out a book, and read the thing and find the thing. And that might be like 7 hours. And then it goes to like, 30 minutes with dial-up, right? Now it's like 30 seconds with a Google search.
Yep.
But to go from like 30 seconds to like 32 seconds, or like 20 seconds in an LLM,
maybe that's not big. Yeah.
Like that's a marginal improvement, right?
I don't know. I think like now PMs can build their own apps, can write SQL with LLMs and everything. I think there's definitely things that people could not have done before that they could definitely do now with way lesser effort, right? It just lowers the bar of effort.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean,
like I think we would have to figure out like what are the tasks that are getting like orders of magnitude different costs. Because like I don't know, man, like an LLM could probably save me like $1,000. Like I don't know how much an LLM is saving most.
I can think of ways where LLMs can definitely save way more than that.
Yeah, but then like do they work reliably?
Make more than that.
Do they work reliably, right?
Yes, I can. That's a big part of my work, right? Trying to make them work reliably, right? At industrial scale, right? So, but yeah. All right, this is a great chat, Jason. I mean, go enjoy the rest of your time in Mexico City.
Like, let's end the stream. I want to share some cool stuff with you.
Oh yeah, of course, end the stream. Right. All right, thank you, everyone. I hope it wasn't too boring.
2 hours. All right.
Yeah.